The candidate night for the Board of Selectmen here in Southampton. My name is Ray Dranowski. I'm a community member from the neighboring city of Holyoke. So it's good to be here out in the country enjoying your company. I'm looking forward to tonight's candidate night with the candidates for Select Board. Just some housekeeping things before we begin. If I could just ask everyone to silence your electronic devices, cell phones, watches, whatever, so that the candidates aren't distracted by that. Each candidate tonight will have a 3-minute time span for an introduction for us. Each of the 4 candidates have been given 3 questions in advance that they will answer for us here tonight. Additional questions will be collected from those who are in attendance here in the audience. And just some information on those questions. Please use 1 card for each question, and we would just ask that 1 card for one of each audience member, so 1 person in the audience can ask 1 question. Please be respectful and informative when submitting questions, and not direct them at any one individual candidate so that everyone can answer. If the questions don't fit that criteria, I do reserve the right as the moderator to pass on to the next one. Each candidate will then will also have 2 minutes to respond to each question this evening. And then each candidate at the end will have 1 minute for a closing statement. And so with that, I'm going to draw the names for the first. So first will be Jackie.
And then I guess we'll just go down the row.
Okay. That's easy. And then we'll move down to John, Maureen, and then to Gary. So Jackie, if you want to start with your opening statement, you have 3 minutes for that.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. First and foremost, I would like to thank all the organizers, especially Janet Kane, for giving us the opportunity to share our vision for the Select Board this evening. In the beginning of my first term in 2011, it was brought to my attention that a Christmas wreath was still hanging over the entrance of the old town hall. I gently took it down, being extremely careful not to disturb the current resident, although it did make its presence known with 1 fell swoop to my head as I hung to the top of the ladder with wreath in hand. When we had a candlelight vigil in the front of the Angel Heart Monument for bereaved parents who lost a child in Crossroad Park every fall, I'm rest assured that by establishing this sacred place, I have brought comfort and a sense of serenity to these beleaguered families. After the horrendous 2011 snowstorm, I researched and helped to implement a FEMA-based program called the Citizens Emergency Management Assistance Program, also known as CMAP, with Lieutenant Ian Illingsworth of the Southampton Police Department. The program helps to build a bridge between the emergency responders and the citizens to alleviate fear and isolation due to the lack of communication. Even more heart-wrenching was to work on getting a trail sign erected for the Conservation Commission with the Conservation Commission Chair Marla Hank in honor of the late Edward Mead, a former member of the Conservation Committee and a dedicated advocate for wildlife who was fatally injured when he collided with a bear on his motorcycle in 2013. Another rewarding project that I've had the privilege to organize every year is the Memorial Day Parade. It continues to be a beacon of appreciation and honor for the men and women in our nation's armed services. And finally, I thought collecting water samples in Southampton for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission study with a grant supplied by the Massachusetts Environmental Protection would not include being licked by a cow, a very big cow. Thankfully, it was started with my walking stick, and with my husband, when my husband taught me how to call them out when he used to live in Ireland, don't ask, she gently moved away. Through collaboration and camaraderie of town employees and citizens, I've been able to bring these projects to fruition, proving once again that Southampton is a tight-knit community that takes care of its own, and one that I'm proud to be a member of.
Thanks very much. I forget to mention earlier that there'll be a signal at the 30-second warning for the candidates. Art will hit the gavel once, and then when their time is up, Art will hit the gavel twice, and you've avoided that. So,
Practice.
we'll move now to John.
Thank you. I'm John Martin. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I wish this large of a crowd was at the select board meetings all the time, because that would be fantastic. Thank you to the moderator and to Janet for putting this together. I'm just going to go over some information about myself, and you'd think I wouldn't have to read it since I know it pretty well, but I'm going to. A little nervousness sets in. Happily married, 2 sons, lived in town 22 years. My wife, Claire, is out there in the audience. We moved to town because we were living in Westfield and we wanted a school system that we could raise our 2 sons in. So we moved in here, and the Larrabee School is what we knew as the school. We moved in the next fall. Everybody moved to Norris. So we thought the kids were coming here to this school, but they went through Norris and they went through Hampshire Regional. Both had great educations. Our youngest had an IEP, so I can vouch for the quality of the education and the teachers in the school system. Followed them all the way through high school. So the school system, I can't say enough about it in town. I work for the University of Massachusetts, Director of Procurement and Campus Services, and certified by the state in my discipline by the Attorney General's office. And we do a lot of purchasing, contracting, and construction projects. Have a lot of experience in construction projects, the laws of Massachusetts, which are the strictest in the nation. So that's why I put myself on the Safety Complex Committee, but I'll go into a little more of that. Got my degree at Western New England College, now Western New England University, my MBA there. I've been a select board member since 2014. Of the 3 years I've been on, I probably have roughly 95% attendance at the meetings, and I like to say 100% participation at all the meetings I'm at, because I'm a believer that if you come to a meeting, you need to participate. I believe Board of Selectmen members need to be involved at the meetings, as well as in between the meetings. There's a lot of board liaisons that you have to deal with in between the 1 or 2 meetings a month. And right now I'm the board liaison with the Public Safety Complex Committee, the Finance Committee, the Master Planning Implementation Committee, and the Greenway Negotiation Committee. In the past, I was on the Finance Committee for approximately 10 years, including being the chair and the vice chair. I was the Fire Department liaison. I was on the Personnel Policy and Procedures Board in the past. So I've gone through a lot of the committees and got experience through that. Waiting for Art over here to give me a click. I'm also on the board of directors for the Massachusetts Higher Ed Consortium. It's about a 700-member nonprofit that does procurement for cities and towns in higher ed, and the town of Southampton happens to be a member. Is that 3?
That's it.
And thank you.
Thank you, John. Maureen.
Thank you, Ray, Janet, and thank you all for coming. My name is Maureen Groden. Many of you may know me as Reenie. I live at 8 Sherrill Lane, which is up off of Moosebrook and Strong. I've lived in town for 35 years. I live with my spouse, John Lassick. We have 2 children, Matthew and Annie Lassick. I'm a registered nurse. I got my undergraduate degree from UMass and my master's from UConn. I also teach nursing at UMass. In fact, today was the last day of the semester. And I also am the interim part-time manager at Mercy Hospice. So most of my career has been in nursing education and also in hospice and palliative care. I'd love to talk to you about palliative care, but maybe that'll be a different time. Prior to being with Mercy Hospice, I was the director of hospice and palliative care for Coley Dickinson. And in that capacity and in the several management jobs that I've had, I've been involved in budgeting, including zero-based budgeting and strategic planning, dealing with different departments, HR, personnel, staffing, lots of good management experience. I've been on numerous committees, from Ethics Committee to Cancer Center Committee, Patient Family Advisory Committee. I also served as the president of the local Nursing Honor Society, which is a Beta Zeta chapter. In town, ever since my kids were at Piper Nursery School next door in the church, I've felt very much that everybody has to do something for their community. And I feel in a lot of ways that I'm a public health nurse at heart. I feel very strongly about taking care of the community. I served at Norris School. I was a substitute school nurse. I was also involved in the principal search committee, and also a volunteer at Hampshire Regional. I was on the principal search committee. I was on the school committee. I served as vice chair. I was also on the school council, curriculum subcommittee. So I've had a lot of good public service in town. After Hampshire Regional, I then got involved with the Board of Health. I was elected to the Board of Health. And in that capacity, we did a tremendous amount of good work on health issues in the town. And it was also during the H1N1 incident in town, so we did a lot on emergency preparedness and emergency dispensing. And so we did a tremendous amount of work with FEMA and got some grants to be able to set up disaster drills and that sort of thing. So it was a very, very good experience. This is a phenomenal town to raise your kids in and to live. I have felt very grateful to be a part of this community, from playing tennis at Conant Park to bowling alley to one of the best public golf courses in the area. Incredible businesses, and I would encourage everyone's support. I have businesses up and down Route 10. Phenomenal teachers, incredible school. So I feel very privileged and honored to be a part of this community. I feel like I have a lot of good management experience. I have a commitment to this town, and I have the leadership to be on the board. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maureen. And last but not least, Gary.
Thank you for coming. This is quite a turnout for this event. My name is Gary Raymond Swanson. I'm a professional engineer. I make my living as a consulting engineer operating out of my office, my own business. I've lived my entire adult life in the town of Southampton, most of which time I have been in community service in one form or another in the town. Some of you may recognize me from the 10 years that I was town moderator. I have served on 2 building committees. Most recently, the building committee that did this job with the conversion of the Larrabee School to the town hall that we enjoy today. My first building committee experience was actually Hampshire Regional School Committee, the first school that was done. When we finished that Hampshire Regional School project, I then got involved with the regional school because I was a little bit concerned about their startup and how they were going to launch the program. So I got involved with them, helped them the first year, and then spent another 10 years on the local school committee. After that, I served roughly 10 years on the Board of Health, another decade or so as town moderator, and then this project came along, and I'm currently an assessor in the town. You learn a lot doing this. In fact, as an assessor, I continue to take financial courses, which enables me to better assimilate, better understand the difficulties we're having financially in the town, and we are having some serious problems. My education, I got a bachelor's degree at UMass Amherst in civil engineering, a master's degree at UMaine Bangor in environmental engineering, and more recently I went to night school I obtained my master's degree in public administration, which is very relevant and germane to what we're talking about here tonight. I offer that service, that knowledge, and my expertise of the institutional knowledge I have in this community. I offer that to you all as a member of the Board of Selectmen, should you see fit to vote for me.
Great, thanks very much, Gary. That wraps up the introductory statements. We're now going to collect questions from the audience so that we can have that following the 3 questions that were submitted in advance to each candidate. We'll start again with Jackie with the first question that was received in advance. The question is, do you believe that the town should be moving forward on a public safety complex? And you will have 2 minutes to answer the question with the 30-second reminder and then the final wrap-up.
Okay, let me first say I would like to thank the Public Safety Building Committee who worked so hard on this project, especially Charlie Kanicki. Do I believe the town should be moving forward on a public safety complex? Absolutely, within reason. When we placed an article on the warrant to build a public safety complex in the past, I felt the project was too expensive. I did vote yes, so I would not influence the vote, but I didn't feel good about it. Now that we are aware of the townspeople's apprehension of voting for an overly expensive public safety complex, we should go back to the drawing board, especially since our emergency responders' safety depends on it. Maybe we need a new architect who can provide us with a decent building plan that can fulfill our needs at a reasonable price, one that we can all feel comfortable for voting for.
Great, thanks, Jackie. John, the same question. Do you believe that the town should be moving forward on a public safety complex?
That's an easy answer. That's definitely yes, I do. The first Public Safety Committee I wasn't a part of, but that was the one that presented the initial findings to the town for a building that was $10.5 million. And obviously that was just a number that wasn't acceptable to everybody. So I asked to be put on the second iteration of the committee, if you will. I have some extensive background in construction at the university. I probably worked on over 100 construction projects since I've been there, so I bring some knowledge to that process. And one of the issues was when you ask somebody what they want, they tell you, and that project turns into a very large project. And that's not the person's fault because you're asking them. So now what we're looking at, we had a meeting about 3 weeks ago, and what we're looking at now is, was the initial site the proper site, because it's behind the fire station and has about $1 million worth of site work alone, or is there a better site? And how do we take the project and go from $10.5 million to an acceptable amount? And right now we figure about $7 million is an acceptable amount. Only got 2 minutes, so I want to get to another part. How are we going to pay for it? Right now we have debt service at the Norris School, roughly $135,000 ending this year. And in 2020, we have debt service from Hampshire Regional, which is roughly $250,000 a year that's ending. So if we kept the debt service at that level and just
30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. So refinanced it, we could probably put a project up there without raising the tax rate. But we could also take that debt that's edging off and lower the tax rate. So I'd want to get opinion from all the residents to find out, are they willing to support it with no additional taxes, or do they want the money back in their tax?
Great, thanks, John.
Okay.
And Maureen, do you believe that the town should be moving forward on a public safety complex?
Yes, I do. I think it's clear to most people in town that the current structures are woefully inadequate. In fact, they're very unsafe. I also feel that Southampton may have missed opportunities, not just in terms of a safety complex, but also in terms of a senior center. Most of the communities around us have public safety complexes and also new senior centers, and it hasn't all been by 2.5 overrides. Hadley had a public safety complex that was funded by an override, but there are several communities that secured emergency federal dollars for emergency management. One of the things I did when I was in Cooley Dickinson was we went out, I did about 50, 60 programs in the community on hospice and palliative care, and among them was to some police and fire folks, because they're transporting a lot of the people that we take care of. And so I had the privilege of going over to Granby. And Granby is a very similar community to Southampton, and they have a beautiful safety complex right now that houses everybody under one roof. Another community around Worcester got a $3 million grant from the federal government from the legislator that represented the town. So I do think there's opportunity. I don't think that the town will support an override, and I think that all opportunities should be looked at in terms of funding. I think there should be regular meetings with our legislators, and I think that there's, we're going to have a huge demographic shift come 2060, which, for those of you that think it's a long way away, just look at when the fire station was built. We're going to have a doubling of people over the age of 65. We've had a 50% increase in the number of housing units in town just in the last 25 years. So clearly we need it. The issue comes into site-specific things, historical issues regarding the building, and of course, most importantly, funding.
Thank you very much, Maureen. And Gary, do you believe that the town should move forward on a public safety complex?
Absolutely, without any question. We're all four of us are in agreement on this one. Most of us are pretty much familiar with the adverse conditions that both police and fire are operating under now. It's actually it's unsafe and in many cases even unhealthy. The problem obviously is financing. I do want to point out that with the two building projects that I've been involved in, I've got some expertise in this area, and I've already indicated or given some of my comments to the building committee in the hopes of keeping them from going too far on where they are. The current site, frankly, is not appropriate for this project. I feel that the architect should have long since, right in the beginning of this project, have advised the committee, no, you don't put it here. There's a whole number of reasons why. But foremost is the fact of trying to build it on a rock. And by the time they blew the dynamite at the rock, they'd end up damaging this project, which we just finished. And I mentioned that to the architect as well. Funding is a problem. It's not a Prop 2.5 override that we would be looking at, but rather, hopefully, we can do this with a smooth transition into what is now a debt service exclusion on both the regional and the one that's just being retired now. We can transition this smoothly so we can do this project without affecting the tax rate, and it won't affect the dollars that we have to spend from the general fund either. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second question, Jackie, what are your priorities for a 3-year term on the select board?
Okay, I will continue to support the citizens of Southampton by listening, fostering goodwill, and making sure they are safe. I would also like to establish a committee to evaluate our infrastructure. By respectfully listening to each other, we can try to find reasonable solutions if at all possible. I have always tried to reassure citizens that if we work together, we can make our community a better place, a place where we are all included. Southampton has always been a small town where everyone knows each other, supports each other. I want to make sure we continue to do that through dedicating some of our resources to each other. Regarding public safety, I am proud to work with the Southampton Police Department, assuring that each citizen is provided a sense of security and reduction of fear during times of crisis and disaster. Finally, I've been through 6 budget seasons, and one thing never changes. There is never enough money for the things we need, much less the things we want, even when we level fund all the departments. I believe that we should establish a committee to investigate our infrastructure that will allow for a professional or light industrial complex to help alleviate some of our tax burden.
Thanks very much. John, what are your priorities for a 3-year term on the select board?
Okay, since we only have 2 minutes and I'm sort of task-oriented, I'm just going to read you some of my goals. I tend to go short-term, long-term. So some of the short terms is we need to finalize and present the balanced budget at the annual town meeting. That's the priority right now. Complete the Safe Routes to School program. That was grant and town funded, and that's almost completed. Find a solution for the Norris School traffic issues. Highway and the police department are working on that. We hired a consultant, so we want to finish that because that's important. We need to hire an experienced town administrator. The town administrator committee and the consultant is working on that. We need to upgrade our roads using our Chapter 90s highway money. Randall Kemp went over that 2 meetings ago, so there's a clear plan for that. I'm on the Greenway Negotiation Committee. I'd like to finalize the purchase of that land and then develop it into a long-term bike path. Complete the cable installation to broadcast all these meetings in all the rooms to all the towns, because I think we're lacking that. Need to finalize the changes to the Southampton general bylaws. That's being worked on by the Bylaws Review Committee, and we review one at each meeting. And develop the public safety complex scenario that will meet the needs of the department and the town and be cost effective, and then secure approval of the town meeting. A few long-term ones: finish the safety complex, obviously, reuse of the old fire department and police department buildings. I'm a big believer in keeping historic buildings in town if we can. But I believe that needs to be funded outside the regular town budget, maybe by the Historical Society. And we have to deal with the marijuana bylaw in the next year or so. Before I get gavelled again, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Maureen, what are your priorities for a 3-year term on the select board?
I think the number one priority, and I think the number one obligation of any town government, is the safety of the residents. I think our community, we need to have a safe and effective police, fire, and emergency services. We've had some very sad and fatal incidences in our area of people that have died in fires, and also break-ins in Western Mass that have actually resulted in death. I think we have a tremendous responsibility to have a safe community. I've talked to many residents in the last couple of months who are very concerned about the responsiveness of our town and services. We need to do all we can to secure a safe community. Along with that, I also think we need to have sound and well-coordinated and ongoing emergency services and planning. We need to ensure the safety of our senior citizens in the community and also in their homes. Today, I listened to presentation after presentation at UMass of students that were working in senior centers, and they're getting grants left and right for dementia training and memory enhancement and what they're calling brain fitness. And I think that there's a lot more we can do to ensure the safety of seniors, because what they want is to stay in their homes. I also am very concerned about the safety of children and teenagers, including in school, in walkways, and on the roadways. So I think safety is our number one concern. Secondly is effective and efficient governance. We need mutual respect in this town between boards and departments. We need careful deliberation but effective decision-making. We need accountability and good communication. And the last priority is generating revenue, exploring funding, meeting regularly with legislators, securing grants, supporting the businesses that we have in town, doing what we can to attract additional businesses that enhance our strength in Southampton. So safety, effective governance, and generating revenue.
Thank you very much. And Gary, what are your priorities for a 3-year term on the select board?
Well, the first item of business that we've got to take care of is hiring a new town administrator. That's in the process. We've got to be very careful in how we do it, because basically the town administrator is the face of the select board, is the face of the CEO, if you will, of the town to the voters. And if we don't select the right person, we have more of a problem than we've got now. When I say the problem we've got now, I've read a report that we got 2.5 years ago from the DOR, Department of Local Services, which very clearly spelled out a problem that we've got. Before we can accomplish anything, I don't care whether you're talking public safety or many of the other financial items we've got to draw, the select board's got to draw the townspeople, the voters, in as partners, as there's too much of a disconnect that exists right now between the Board of Selectmen and the voters. And it's been identified in this, it was identified in the Bernie Lynch report, which we'll discuss later. And that is a serious problem that's got to be addressed. And at that point, then we can move along. Obviously, the safety complex is a major concern. Human resources is a major concern of mine. I've seen people go down the road because we don't treat them right. We don't pay them enough. We train them. Somebody else hires them, and we retrain again. That's just false economy. And education, I would like to see the schools more melded into the actual day-to-day, week-to-week activities.
Thanks very much. And the last question that they were given in advance to Jackie. Last year, the town had a state-funded consultant, Bernard Lynch, evaluate the structure of town government. What are your views on Mr. Lynch's town charter proposal, and what changes to the structure of town government would you support?
After thoroughly evaluating Mr. Lynch's Mr. Lynch's home charter proposal, I do not recommend implementing this form of government in our town, due to the fact that it gives a town administrator too much power over the following departments, which will not appreciate being micromanaged: police, fire, health, DPW, assessors, town clerk, and the building department. An additional negative aspect of the home charter is taking away the public's ability to vote for a town clerk and a town treasurer. The public has already spoken to this matter multiple times at our town meetings. Most importantly, and the most disconcerting of this charter, is that an appointed individual is given more policy responsibilities, that they are guided by laws and regulations, require qualifications for the job, and they must cooperate and coordinate with other governments. I'm not saying that's wrong, that's, but it's not, the people that are in the elected office are doing this already. So this report has said they're not going to be able to do that if they're appointed or elected, but the people that are elected, that we have elected, do all those things. It also says the voters cannot determine if the candidate is qualified for the position, assuming once again that the voter is not smart enough to cast an educated vote. I do not recommend that we continue to have a candidate night. I do recommend that we continue to have a candidate night for all elected positions in our town. I do agree on one point Mr. Lynch has proposed, that we update our town bylaws, which are all currently, that we are currently doing at this time.
Thanks very much. John, last year the town had a state-funded consultant, Bernard Lynch, evaluate the structure of town government. What are your views on Mr. Lynch's town charter proposal, and what changes to the structure of town government would you support?
I think this is the tough question to answer. But the other two questions, I had definite yeses and nos. I think we need changes to our government, but looking over the proposal, I think there's a lot of issues if we go to the home charter, because it does take a lot of responsibility away from certain segments of the town. And I know when we've gone to town meeting before and we've tried to change the treasurer or the clerk from an elected to a hired position, people get up and say, no, it takes away our responsibility. So I think there's a lot of good points here. I think we need to give the town administrator more responsibility, but we don't want to turn it all over to the town administrator. And the process that you'd have to go through to do the home rule charter is you devise a plan, you bring it to the town meeting, they vote. Once they vote, you bring it to the state, and if they approve it, then you bring it back to the voters. What I'd like to do is set up a committee that studies this, and before we go through this whole process in developing a big plan before we go to town meeting, sit down with the folks, explain what the whole process is, get their input, and there's ways we can tweak what Mr. Lynch put in here. So I'd like to get involvement with the, excuse me, with the townspeople so that we can decide what you really want, because a lot of people don't want to take power away from the vote, which I understand, but sometimes it's better to hire a person with skill than just go to an election and get whoever doesn't have a position. And we've got some examples. We've got some examples in town hall. Fortunately, we have a great clerk and a great treasurer. It wasn't always like that. So we need to discuss this before we present anything. So I think there's good points. But I can't say yes, but I can't say no either at this point.
Thanks very much. Maureen, last year the town had a state-funded consultant, Bernard Lynch, evaluate the structure of town government. What are your views on Mr. Lynch's town charter proposal, and what changes to the structure of town government would you support?
I'm going to assume that there are people in this room that don't understand what the report was all about, so I'm just going to say that what it said was that Southampton's experienced a high rate of growth in the last 25 years. The population's grown by 30%, and the housing units have grown by 50%. It also said there's a lack of leadership and management, there's a lack of trust, coordination, and communication. The word fragmented was used multiple times. There isn't a single individual at the helm of this 16+ million organization. Each also seemingly operates under their own set of rules. Each silo operates under its own set of rules and sense of expectations. There was a concern regarding the lack of citizen engagement in town and lack of trust in local government. 14% of voters vote in elections and 4% of voters attend town meeting. So they proposed a home charter so that a lot of the current positions that are elected positions would become appointed positions. I can't see a lot of support for that when there's a lot of lack of trust. The last thing that voters would approve with lack of trust is to go ahead and give more authority to the Board of Selectmen and also to the town administrator. However, I never got the impression from the report that we had to buy all of the recommendations. I think there's a lot of good things in the report. The bylaws is a perfect example of that. One of the other recommendations they made was to create a DPW and that there'd be multiple positions underneath DPW, for example, tree warden, parks, and also cemetery. So I had some great conversations with the people from the Cemetery Commission who are very committed to the work that they're doing. They're very concerned about some of the trees over the graves at the cemetery before Memorial Day. Would it help that they're all under the same umbrella, the tree warden and the cemetery, or would they be diluted and the passion and interest of these committees wouldn't be represented by the DPW? So there's a lot of decisions to be made. The worst thing that could happen is that this report would end up on a shelf somewhere. I agree with John. I think that I think a committee needs to be formed with timetables, and that perhaps we'd agree to some of the things.
Thanks very much. And the last question, Gary, last year the town had a state-funded consultant, Bernard Lynch, evaluate the structure of town government. What are your views on Mr. Lynch's town charter proposal, and what changes to the structure of town government would you support?
First of all, I want to make it very clear, I'm a strong believer in democracy. Mr. Lynch's report, well, let me back up. Before he ever did the report, I interviewed Mr. Lynch and got a pretty good take on him, which was reflected in his report. Basically, Mr. Lynch was a large city boy brought into a small town to do a job that he had neither had the sensitivity to do or the experience, frankly. I disagree with most of his restructuring of our town government, which has already been discussed by others here. But I wouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. He had one very good idea, and that is Appendix A, consolidate the Department of Public Works. I'm not only in favor of that, I would very much, if elected as a selectman, launch a campaign to begin to get this consolidation in place, because there are too many fragmented public works parts. I'm fully in agreement with him on this one, and he lists them. I realize there are some problems with it, particularly with the water department that has legislative authority, which would have to be modified somewhat, and I'm sure I'm not going to be very popular with the water department when I say that, but we've got a very much of a need to do that. And Lynch, again, identified the problem of not having a good connectivity between the board and the voters. Very, very important. So I'm in partial agreement with Mr. Lynch's report.
Okay, thanks very much. We now move to the So I randomly selected these cards out of the box, and we're going to switch up the order a little bit. And I think the first question will be a pretty easy answer for the candidates, which may allow us for more questions to get through, because we had some very good questions submitted. So we're going to start with John on this first question from the audience. Will the candidates agree to attend 75% or more of select board meetings?
I think that's not enough. Like I said, I go at least 75. April 18th was my wife's birthday. We were talking about the COA. I was here. She was understanding. Last September, it was our 30th anniversary. We had a tough agenda. She was understanding, so I was here. I think you need to make a commitment, and 75% just is not enough. And not just to the meetings. You need to get out during the meetings. You need to find out what's going at finance, what's going at the safety complex, at all other meetings. And there's only certain people on the select board that do that. And from my point of view, if you don't want to do that, you shouldn't be on the select board, because how do you find out what's going on?
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Maureen, will you agree to attend 75% or more of the select board meetings?
Absolutely, I will. We have a problem right now with attendance on the select board meeting, for those of you that don't know this. And so I absolutely agree to be on it. This is why I'm running now. I'm not currently taking care of children, grandchildren, or parents, which wasn't true in the recent past. So I feel right now, I'm in a position right now where I'm not working an 80-hour-week job, and so I'm committed to being available. I will say there is one date that I have where I've already made a commitment to a national conference. Other than that, I will make a commitment to go to every single meeting I possibly can, vying any personal difficulty.
Great. Gary, would you agree to attend 75% or more of the select board meetings?
Without question, absolutely. If a person is going to get involved and make a commitment to this, the commitment should be full and unconditional. Obviously, people take vacations, they get sick, things do happen. But whenever you're available, if a person is available, they should be in attendance. Not only at the meetings, but it's important to look at what's happening between times. You got to prepare for these meetings. You can't operate. We're a $680 million corporation. We've got an annual budget that's pushing $17 million now. You've got to prepare for these meetings, not only attend them, but know what you're doing once you get there. And frankly, even now with being an assessor, I'm in and out of the town hall quite a bit, just checking on that office, and I would very definitely be doing it as a selectman.
Thanks. And Jackie, would you agree to attend 75% or more of the select board meetings?
Yes, I have been, probably 90% of the time I have been to the meetings over the 6 years, and it is very important to attend. But you're here physically, but 24 hours. I'm thinking about the town all the time. It's not just when I get here, and of course you have to read your emails and catch up on everything that's going on, so that when you finally get here, you're prepared to make a decision. But it's not just something that you do once a week or in budget. It's when we're in budget season, it's every week, and if not, it's every 2 weeks in the summer. But it's a full-time, to me, mentally commitment to the town. You have to care for people. You have to understand what's going on. There's so many things coming at you all the time, and you really have to be ready and think about it.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we'll start with John again. Will a new safety complex compromise funding for the school?
Not in my opinion, because we do have debt that is retiring this year as well as 2020. I would try to plan so that debt could be reused for the safety complex. I don't think anybody's going to vote for a new debt funding, because that's just going to raise your taxes. And every $100,000 we raise, it's like 15 cents per thousand on your tax rate. So that can quickly add up, and I don't think anybody wants to pay the $100 or $200 more. So I think we need to find funding that is rolling off now, and we can reuse it in the future. You won't get a tax rebate on that, but at least your taxes won't go up. We'll have a safety complex that we can be proud of, and we need to get those people out of those buildings, because they're going to implode on them after a while. And if somebody gets hurt, it's going to cost us a lot more than going forward and doing the funding. And I really think we have to show these folks, because they're keeping the town safe. We need to show them that we respect that and we support them. So I think we don't build all new funding. We use what we can as it rolls off and reuse it.
Thank you. To Maureen, will a new safety complex compromise funding for the school?
Absolutely not. You may not know this, but 2 grants have just been cut. State grants have been cut to the Norris School. And we also have probably the lowest per pupil expenditure in Western Massachusetts at 10.7, which compared to Amherst 19.9, Hadley 12.5. There's no way I would support cutting the local schools in favor of the safety complex. I think the funding has to come from elsewhere.
Thank you. Gary, will a new safety complex compromise funding for the school?
No. The previous two answers are correct. I will just amplify one thing that was, one should not operate under the delusion that when one debt is satisfied that you can simply roll it over to another debt. That's not what happens. The reason we vote debt exclusions and we don't vote for Prop 2.5 overrides is an override is permanent. A debt exclusion only allows us to go above the Prop 2.5 tax ceiling for the duration of that debt. We still, once that debt is retired, that debt exclusion likewise is retired. Now, that being said, you can still smoothly transition without affecting the economy of the school. You can smoothly transition into another debt exclusion, but it does have to be voted for, just so long as everybody realizes it's not a simple rollover affair. But I think we could get the vote as long as we do our homework and involve and engage and keep the voters involved in the entire process. That's the key to it. We need to reconnect and keep a very, very good informational flow going to the voters in order for this to happen. But it won't affect the school budgets because that comes from the general fund. This does not.
Thank you. And Jackie, will a new safety complex compromise funding for the school?
No, I don't believe it will. The debt on Norris School roof will be done in FY19, the last payment in FY18, and the Hampshire Regional Addition will be done in FY 2020, paid in 2019, which will free up money for that project. So I believe it's really important that we do so to keep the safety of the kids, and that we continue on and do that project.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question, we'll start with John again. Do you or anyone in your family have a business employment relationship with the town? Describe how you would handle conflict of interest.
Well, I work for the state, so conflict of interest in my job is I have to certify every year. I'm in the procurement field, so that's right where the conflict of interest would hit. I have no businesses that do any business with the town. I don't have any businesses, period, if you will. So there's no conflict of interest. I'm very familiar with Chapter 268A, which is a conflict of interest law in the state of Massachusetts. I get all my folks certified on that every year. Janine, the clerk, gets us recertified every year, so I have no conflicts whatsoever with the town.
Thank you. To Maureen, do you or anyone in your family have a business employment relationship with the town? Describe how you would handle conflict of interest.
I currently am not an employee of the town at all. I left the subbing situation quite a long time ago. My spouse is a financial planner. He has some clients that he represents with TSAs that are in the school system. If there was any situation, it's not a direct employment situation. If there were any situations at all that in any way conflicted with that, I would recuse myself from discussion.
Okay, thank you. Gary, do you or anyone in your family have a business employment relationship with the town? Describe how you would handle any conflict of interest.
The answer is absolutely I do. The solution is very simple. We've had selectmen and select persons, if you will, who were direct employees of the town. I would use the same procedures that they did, which basically is you make sure that you don't sign your own payroll. My wife is the health director. I would make sure that I did not sign her payroll, that it was handled separately, so there is no conflict of interest there. The other thing is that I think I may have mentioned before that I designed over the years, I designed the majority of the Southampton water system as a professional and did a lot of the other work. That's why I'm so intimately familiar with the town's infrastructure. I'm not the principal engineer anymore for the water department, which is why I waited until now before, about running for the select board. I have occasionally been called upon for assistance time and again, but certainly no big jobs. And the answer to that is that the water department, first of all, runs its own operation. It's not run by the select board. I would have no direct influence on anything that the water department did. There's a procedure by which you simply declare any potential conflict of interest through the town clerk's office, and I would do that, certainly. So it's all open and above board, no question.
Thank you. And Jackie, do you or anyone in your family have a business employment relationship with the town? Describe how you would handle conflict of interest.
Okay, so my husband, Tom Sears, is the plumbing inspector. And when we sign warrants, I do not sign his payroll warrant. So that's it. That's the only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, we'll move now. The next question, we'll start with Maureen. This question, they would like to know from each candidate for you to state your view on the importance of retaining open farm and woodland in Southampton, and to outline the costs versus the benefits of ongoing parcelization and development.
I totally support our town. That's one of the reasons why people come to Southampton. It's absolutely beautiful. You go to any place in Southampton and there are phenomenal views of mountains and farms. I support the recent bylaw that was written that would protect, so to speak, agricultural lands. I remember when not too long after moving in town, I listened to a neighbor complain that some of the chopped up corn was blowing from the back of a truck that was being transported to feed cows. I think that's part of living in this community, and it goes with the territory. I completely support the farms in this town, and I would, in every step of the way, support the farms. In terms of development, there's development everywhere in this town. You hear the statistics. There's another development going up on White Loaf. I talked to a resident who is very worried about 25 acres being potentially developed right next to her house. People own the land. There's not a lot that you can do in terms of whether they choose to sell it. I think you can pretty much perk most places now, it seems. Right behind my house, they've been dynamiting, and that big, huge place is perked. I support what was said in the Lynch report about doing some strategic planning and not just master planning. And I think that's what our town needs to do, which is a much broader view than just master planning.
Thank you. Gary, would you state your view on the importance of retaining open farm and woodland in Southampton, and outline the costs versus the benefits of ongoing parcelization and development?
First of all, I do support the continuance and furthering of the ambiance that we have with the open land, the agricultural preservation. As an assessor, I'm involved with the 61A, which is the farmland. We reduced the assessments and therefore the taxes on farmland to assist people in keeping this land open rather than forcing them to sell it to developers. We're all going to have an opportunity on Article 8, the Right to Farm bylaw, which I believe Charlie Kanicki had a great deal to do with.
This is in the background.
Okay, in the background. Nevertheless, I am all in favor of that. I think it's important that both the Right to Farm bylaw, the Community Preservation Act was a huge boon to purchasing properties and keeping properties available to maintain, to sustain the ambiance that we have come to know and love in Southampton. This town has doubled in population since I got here, and frankly, the needs and just the idea of keeping some of these areas open, I'm very much in favor of it, and I think we have to maintain the pleasures that we take in this town.
Thank you. Please state your views, Jackie, on the importance of retaining open farm and woodland in Southampton, and to outline the costs versus the benefits of ongoing parcelization and development.
Okay, I too support the bylaw to protect farmlands, and the open space, I think, is so important for our children in the community. And this is one of the reasons. I'm originally from Holyoke, and I was lucky enough to grow up near the reservoir, so I had a lot of space to run in. But this is different. This is open space. It just gives you a wonderful, calming feeling, and I think that there's not many communities that are left that have this kind of open space, and I think it's really healthy for people, and I would not like to see, when I'm talking about having a light industrial or a light professional building, something like in East Hampton, if you go towards Northampton, they might be doctors, professional buildings, something like that, but not taking space and putting in too many homes or too many companies. And that's the charm of Southampton. That's another reason, besides the school system, that we moved here, and we've been here for 28 years and are very, very fortunate that we're here. And I hope that Southampton stays the way it is.
Okay, thank you. And John, if you could state your views on the importance of retaining open farm and woodland in Southampton, and outline the costs versus the benefits of ongoing parcelization and development.
I think we all agree on the right to farm bylaw and the warrant. We all support that, which I think is a great thing. One of the reasons we came to town is because we wanted kids to grow up in a country atmosphere. We have 7.5 acres, a little ponderosa, if you will, not that much, but we love it. I'm not adverse to new growth, because there's going to have to be some new growth. It has to be managed. I think one of the issues with people selling large parcels is they can't afford to stay in town, and somebody's offering them a good chunk of money, so they sell the land and they have to move. So I think that's one of the issues. Somebody who retires on a fixed income, maybe the taxes are too high. We need to help these folks retain that land, or maybe figure out a way to buy it from them and keep them in that property. And I think some people think that the more development we have, the more money's coming into town, and that's true, but it costs us more to raise the families, and then we get back in the taxes. So it really costs us more when we have a big development. Got to maintain the streets. We got to keep all that going. So it's not like if we don't have development, we're going to lose money. That's not the case. So we got to have wise development, I think, and keep open space, because I think that's what makes our town nice and attracts people in, along with our education, fire, police department, and our highway department. People, I want to talk till he gavels me. People don't come to town for any one of those things. They come to town for everything. We have a nice bedroom community. We have a great school system. We have a safe community because of police, and we have fire and ambulance, and we have a highway department. And all of that, I think, is what attracts people to town, and it also keeps people from leaving. So we've got to balance that out. We've got to keep all of those in sync, I think. Otherwise, we're gonna start going down. And we're on the third lowest on our student per pupil spending, but we do such a great job on that. Just think what we could do if we could raise it up a little. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The next question, I'll start with Gary here on this side. What is your position on whether the selectman should be a paid position?
I don't believe that the Board of Selectmen, the individuals on the Select Board, should be paid. Many years ago, there was a small stipend that was given to the Select Board, along with assessors and certain other people. In my opinion, it ended up being abused, because as soon as they became paid, they ended up taking out town life insurance, and it just got really, really, not life, health insurance, which is very expensive. It got sticky. Frankly, at that time, the Finance Committee eliminated all of these stipends, and I can't really criticize them for having done that. It eliminated all the other problems that were associated with it. Frankly, any stipend that was given to the selectmen can't even begin to compensate for the kind of time that a dedicated select person puts into this job. And frankly, a little stipend is almost insulting. I think you're better off with nothing.
Okay, thank you. Jackie, what is your position on whether the selectman should be a paid position?
Well, I never even, have been doing this for 6 years, had considered it, and, you know, I don't think it would make any difference at this point. You know, this is something that you do because it's important, not to get paid. Because as I stated before, volunteering is a something that you do for your community, and you get back so much. And anything that's worth, it's not tangible. That's more important than money.
Okay, thank you. John, what is your position on whether the selectman should be a paid position?
Some selectmen, some finance committee members, they deserve to be paid, but I do not think they should be paid because I think it draws the wrong people to the table. And what Gary said is absolutely true. I was on the finance committee, and I was one of the ones that led that charge to take the stipend away from the board of selectmen, because as we were going through the budget process, I have a healthcare background in administration, and we were looking through the healthcare numbers, and we're saying, wait a minute, we've got about $50,000 here on the select board alone, because they're taking advantage of the law that says if you get paid $1 or more, you can have the health insurance that the regular town employees had. So we led that charge. And I remember when we brought it up to the select board, I think 3 of the members on the select board were taking it at the time, and obviously they did not go along with it, so we had to bring it to the town meeting floor and bring it there, and there was quite the discussion, if you will, and we got it taken off. But to me, to have this position in order to get benefits has you sitting at the table for absolutely the wrong reason. So maybe deserve it, but definitely I wouldn't go with it.
Thank you. And Maureen, what is your position on whether the select board, the selectman should be a paid position?
No, I don't think it should be a paid position. I think it sets up the wrong relationship with the town.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we'll start with Jackie as we move down the table, and I hope I'm reading this correctly. How do you view the role of the select board and the other committees as they interface with boards and commissions before making decisions?
Can you read again?
Yes. How do you view the role of the select board and the other committees as they interface with the boards and commissions before making decisions?
How do I view?
The role of the select board and other committees as they interface with boards and commissions before making decisions?
Well, with any decision I make, I like to have as much information as I can, and to have committees come in front of us and to explain what they need, whether monetarily and or trying to help them work through a decision affecting the town and with employees. You try to be fair, and it can be very complicated because there are bylaws, and you can't tell some of the committees what to do, but yet you have to be able to listen to them and hopefully help them.
Okay, thank you. John, how do you view the role of the select board and the other committees as they interface with boards and commissions before making decisions?
So are you asking how the Board of Selectmen, how they interface with other committees in the town?
I believe so.
Okay, so with that in mind, it goes back to what I said originally, is the job of the Board of Selectmen is not to sit here and just go to a meeting. We have liaison assignments with other committees, Finance Committee, the Public Safety Committee, the Master Planning Implementation, the Greenway. These are all the ones I'm on. We go to those meetings and we sit there with these folks at their meetings, and we're the representative of the Board of Selectmen. So any information we get at that meeting, we bring back to the Board of Selectmen. I don't think it's up to the board necessarily to come to all our meetings, or the Finance Committee or any other committee, and inform us. It's up to us to reach out to the committees, be a liaison, and bring that information back to the Board of Selectmen. So you need a select board member that's willing to do that and spend the time and the energy. And sometimes I could be out there 3 nights a week. I know a couple of the other board members do that too. During budget season, I pretty much say to my wife, I'll see you at 10 o'clock because there's a lot of meetings going on. But it's important to be there. And I get satisfaction out of it because I like hearing what's going on. So I think it's really critical. You got to be involved. If you don't want to be involved, probably shouldn't be sitting up here.
Okay. Maureen, how do you view the role of the select board and the other committees as they interface with boards and commissions before making decisions?
I agree. I think that all of the select board members end up having liaison assignments, and I think there have been attendance issues there as well as on the existing select board. So I think there's a commitment to be present as a liaison and to bring back to the board information from these various committees and boards. I also have sat in a lot of Finance Committee meetings recently as the various boards and departments are reporting their budgets, and it has been bumpy. I'll be honest, I think that there's a pretty big variation in the preparedness on the part of various departments in terms of what they've submitted, how they explain the budget, how do they explain any variances. It seems a little bit too parallel and not enough of intersection between the select board and also some of the departments and with the Finance Committee. So I would support a little more accountability, a little more communication, a little better coordination of the boards, committees, and the select board.
Thanks. And Gary, how would you view the role of the select board and the other committees as they interface with boards and commissions before making decisions?
First off, I'm glad I didn't get this question first. Sorry, Jackie. No, actually, I don't believe, there's a reason why we have committees and boards that specialize in certain areas. I do not feel that the Board of Selectmen should be micromanaging any of these committees and boards. However, many of the decisions that the Board of Selectmen makes are, you know, they have to know, they need certain information from these other committees. Very case in point, every September or so, the assessors come before the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen has to decide, are we going to have a single tax rate or are we going to have a split tax rate? And obviously the committee, the board, assessors in that particular case has to tell, give the reasons why we make the recommendations that we do. And that, in that particular case, it's real easy because 93% of our assessed valuation in Southampton is residential property. Yeah. So it doesn't make any sense at all for us to split and charge industry and commercial more. But that's the type of thing that the board should draw people in, and as John says, there should be a liaison from the board, to various committees, and particularly with my knowledge of the infrastructure of the town and the needs, I would volunteer to be the liaison with Public Works.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have one last question, and I think that's going to bring us to the time. Name 2 of the most critical issues Southampton must address in the next 2 years and how you will resolve them. And we'll start with John.
Of course you are.
I'm just trying to move down the line. I think I threw you one too many at the beginning.
Is this where we take like a 5-minute break? 2 most critical issues. I think one is safety, the fire and the police, as we talked about, public safety complex. if we don't do something about that quickly, I say quickly in the next 5 years, it's literally going to fall down. If you talk to anybody on, I think, a historical commission, they're going to tell you that building's, it's sitting there, but it's not going to sit there for forever. So we need to figure out a way to put those folks in a nicer building, better building, not the Taj Mahal, but something that we can afford and we'll be proud of, in that it won't increase our taxes. How would I do that? I'm on the Public Safety Committee. We're looking at new locations, maybe a new architect, somewhere ways we can just decrease the size of it and decrease the cost of it. So that's one way, and that's going to take a little while, but next time it goes to the town meeting, I want to be comfortable with whatever number we have. You folks are going to say, yeah, that's a good number, we can afford it, and we need it. So I need to come up with another one?
It's the two most critical issues? That's completely up to you.
Well, the other critical issue, and it's a critical issue every year, been on the Finance Committee, like I said, about 10 years, is we're now $16 million. When I started, I think we were $8 million. One of the issues is Hampshire Regional has a large percentage of that, so that comes right off the top. So we don't get to play with that. So with Norris School and the others. So we have a small pot to manage out of that. We need to figure out a way to give our departments what they need. We need to hire professional people, keep them here with the proper benefits and the proper pay, and we got to figure out how to do that with the money that we have. Because I don't think by a show of hands people are going to say, raise my taxes a lot, correct? Okay, I just wanted to check. So we need to figure out the finances.
Thank you very much. Maureen, would you name two of the most critical issues Southampton must address in the next 2 years and how you will resolve them?
I mentioned earlier about the safety of the community, and I agree with John. I think that plans to move forward in terms of a safety complex and to improve the emergency planning of our town is extremely important. I think funding is another huge need of the town. The town administrator announced last night that the Chapter 70 funds are going up a whopping 0.06, I think, % is what he said. And I think that we need to pressure legislators to help communities, local towns, and cities. When I was in the school committee, I know this keeps coming up all over the place, but we were encouraged to regionalize, and they promised the world with regional transportation, and we have never seen 100% of regional transportation ever. So I think that funding is a biggest thing, and also safety, but, good functioning government in town is also a huge need. I think that we've had the Department of Revenue report, we've had the Lynch report. I mean, it's not exactly working as best as it can in this town, and I think that we need to get more community involvement, and we need to work hard to make this beautiful town have more unity.
Thank you. Gary, can you name two of the most critical issues Southampton must address in the next 2 years and how you will resolve them?
Yes, I'm not going to, public safety is obviously at the top of the list, but frankly, there's a couple other items I'd like to discuss here. And without sounding like I'm harping too much on this, is the public trust issue, that we don't get anything done until there is more of a connection between the voters and the board. And I think that can be accomplished by more openness, more involvement of the public in the Board of Selectmen's meetings and deliberations, and that less deliberations be taken in executive session. That being said, that's the solution to the problem, or at least one of the solutions. The other thing that has bothered me for years is the human resources. We do not have any professional human resources service in our town. As a result, I've seen in 3 years, I've seen 5 or 6 very good trained people go and work for somebody else. That means we got to train a new person. That's false economy. We need to have professional HR service in this town. How we're going to go about it, I don't have all the answers here tonight, but I think we got to pay attention to it, and we've got to start keeping our people and making them know they're worthwhile, and we're not just a training ground to send them down the road. We need them to stay here. We need them to use their institutional knowledge to better serve our town.
Thank you. And Jackie, can you name two of the most critical issues Southampton must address in the next 2 years and how you will resolve them?
Well, I think the most important thing right now is a safety public complex because of the buildings, and we need to keep our emergency responders safe. But also the budgets. I mean, I think we need to make sure that the revenue that we take in is allocated to each department so they get what they need to help the community to stay safe. In 2016, it was $16,427,544 total revenues, and it was tough to distribute that through all the different departments. And like I said before, the way to alleviate some of that financial stress is to get a light industrial park or professional buildings to bring in more tax revenues.
Okay, thank you. And that is for the questions from the audience. And we'll now finish with our closing statements. And each candidate is allowed 1 minute to wrap up. And we'll start with, not with John, with Maureen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate this opportunity. As a nurse, I care very much about the health of all of you. I also care about the health of your families, and I care very much about the health of this community. The Select Board addresses many health issues on a regular basis, from emergency planning to the ambulance service to safety to the well-being of seniors, children, our roads, water quality, and other emergency services. As a healthcare manager, I'm passionate about effective leadership. An organization can't be effective without high-performing people, departments, accountability, fiscal stability, technology efficiencies, and strategic planning. And of course, mutual respect between departments. The Select Board addresses many of these management issues: budgets, departmental technology, planning. I'm very hardworking and trustworthy. I'm also compassionate because we are, after all, a community of people. I have been successful in my career and in public service. I love this town. I would represent it well, and I would appreciate your vote on May 1st.
Thanks very much. Gary, do your closing statement.
First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that this is the first time in all my community service for all the years that I've actually had to work for it. It's been fun. I got to pass out pens, so forth. Bottom line is that I saw people in this campaign, old friends, associates, people I hadn't seen for years. And it's been a lot of fun seeing these people. I want to thank Janet and the organizers for this group. And frankly, with my institutional knowledge, my education and experience in Southampton's finances, Southampton's infrastructure, and various diverse boards and commissions, I believe that I can serve the town well if elected, and I formally request your vote on May 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And Jackie?
I have faithfully listened and withheld my comments until all facts were thoroughly investigated and all board members were duly consulted. Then, and only then, have I been able to render a fair decision. Serving on a 5-member select board has had its challenges and rewards. While some of us have made mistakes, we have tried to facilitate constructive discourse and render sound solutions. Through compromise and insightful late-night meetings, the select board members have faithfully dedicated their expertise for the good of the community. I originally ran for office in 2011 to unify, support, and recognize all the townspeople. I would like to thank the citizens of Southampton who have believed in me and gave me the honor to serve on the Select Board for the last 6 years. Today, I ask for your support on May 1st so I may continue to have a positive influence on the well-being of the citizens of Southampton.
Thank you very much. And John?
Okay. First of all, thank you again for coming, and I truly hope going forward we can get this kind of turnout at the meetings, because I think that's one of the things we need. We need the involvement, because if you're here, you may be watching on TV, so I shouldn't say that, but it's really great to have an audience so that we can get some feedback The Lynch report said very good things about a lot of our areas, the staffing, a lot of the things we have going. They're doing great. I think we need to build on that. We need to get a town administrator that will take that and go forward. I'll continue to work as hard as I have.
You have 30 more seconds.
That's a little annoying. As hard as I have, I'll be at the meetings, and whatever you need, I'll be available. So thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all the candidates for their time tonight and thank the audience participation. For those who are watching on TV, we have over 30 people here. So we certainly encourage more to come down to the select board meetings and encourage everyone to get out and vote in the next election in May. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.